throughout 2015, and so unfortunately, more things happened that I didn't want to see happen in 2015, so at least by seeing this match early in 2016, we will determine who is the better wrestler between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. Now, scientifically, the better wrestler, in my opinion, hands down, is Brock Lesnar, because Brock Lesnar has accomplished so much throughout his career. To Roman Reigns' only one championship reign, Brock Lesnar's had 4 championship reigns, including his most recent. If he defeats Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble, he'll go to 5 championship reigns, and also he's won a Royal Rumble match back in 2003. He's won the King of the Ring. He's won the NCAA Division I championship. He was a college national champion in 1998. He's played professional football. He was the UFC world champion. Nobody, arguably, has accomplished more than what Brock Lesnar has throughout his careers, no matter how you choose to remember Brock Lesnar. So if there ever was a deserving number 1 contender off his victory over The Undertaker back at Hell in a Cell last October, a controversy, of course, surrounding that one as well, with how the Wyatt family got involved at the end of the match. But despite how controversy surrounded that match as well, Lesnar came away from it victorious. And if anyone should be having a right now to the number 1 contendership to Roman Reigns' championship, it probably would be someone like Brock Lesnar. Ever before, it was someone like Sheamus, who just capitalized on an opportunity by coming out at the conclusion of the Survivor Series pay-per-view, which obviously Roman Reigns we thought was going to be crowned champion in the fallout of. He once again attacked Triple H, and then after that, Sheamus comes out off the opportunity given to him by Triple H, aligns himself with the Authority, then forms the League of Nations off of becoming champion with King Barrett and Rusev, and they've been on top of WWE ever since. But Reigns, becoming champion, I will agree with a lot of people who have come out of the fallout of TLC by saying, if there ever was a controversial moment that happened in wrestling within the last 6 months, this has to be it. And to be honest with you, through having a lot of conversations with wrestling fans, he's not my choice for a champion. I'd prefer any champion than the champion that we have now. More champions have been far more impressive over the years than what Roman Reigns is currently right now to me. I'm not a really big fan of how Roman Reigns became champion, nor have I really been a fan of Roman Reigns throughout his entire career. No matter if you're talking about him, from the years he spent on NXT in the earlier years of his career, never really was a big fan of Roman Reigns, and I can't really say that I've supported anything that he's done. So I'd be emphatically thrilled. I'd be overcome with emotion, really, if Roman Reigns did lose the championship to either Brock Lesnar or somebody else. Because is this really the man that you want to see headlining WrestleMania? The only way that it would really get over if Reigns was headlining WrestleMania would be if it was against someone like Triple H and the championship was on the line. And I hate to admit it, but if Triple H came out of the match as champion, that would be the only way they'd get over a match between Roman Reigns and Triple H at WrestleMania. And the fact that Reigns went into WrestleMania headlining as champion and became one of the champions in the few percentages that have went into WrestleMania and unsuccessfully defended their championship. So I think that, there's a lot that could happen in the fall of the Roman Reigns becoming champion. We're just going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. But, I think that, I can kind of safely draw a conclusion that I've preferred more champions. Even The Miz was a better champion than what Roman Reigns is right now, because he's not getting numbers for WWE. And if he's not getting numbers for WWE, then he's not pleasing Vince McMahon, and he's not pleasing Triple H. He's not pleasing any member of WWE Creative or the executive board members. So obviously they're going to put the championship on someone who can get them numbers. The thing about Daniel Bryan, for instance, that really stood out to me was the fact that Daniel Bryan as champion was getting numbers for WWE. People were really getting into the S movement. He was selling just as many t-shirts, maybe not as Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock from the late 90s, but he was selling just as many t-shirts as people like John Cena and Randy Orton, and fans were really supporting Daniel Bryan with this Yes Movement thing, this whole scenario, and it was successful. Now, based off the crowd reaction from Philadelphia earlier this year in the fall of the 2015 Royal Rumble with how The Rock came out and got a huge pop, when you look at the way that it unfolded, The Rock got a bigger pop than what Roman Reigns did, and that's not really what the focal point should have been on. The attention should have been on how Roman Reigns won the championship and won the Royal Rumble, and how it all unfolded, not The Rock coming out and making the save against Kane in the Big Show the way that it happened. It's really unfortunate, the response that Roman Reigns got at the Royal Rumble, and I think this has been the result of why Roman Reigns has been cost so many opportunities throughout 2015, and nothing really has gone his way up until this point. At least Roman Reigns has turned a proverbial corner in his career and is continuing to thrive off momentum in the fall of the recent pay-per-views. You can hate on Roman Reigns all you want, but he has had a really impressive year in 2015, winning the Royal Rumble, winning at Fastlane, competing in the main event of WrestleMania against Brock Lesnar, going from that to having a remarkable feud with Bray Wyatt, coming within a fingertip away from winning the Money in the Bank briefcase, being crowned champion as the winner of the 2015 Survivor Series single elimination tournament, and off of that, being scored at TLC in a match with Sheamus, and in the follow of that, less than 24 hours after TLC, he becomes champion in a main event of Raw, and one of the few times we have seen an extreme rarity of how a championship changes hands on Raw. And when you see championships changing hands on Raw as often as what we have over the last number of months, you kind of got to put into perspective, what are the ratings reports and reviews of people like Roman Reigns always being on top really looking like? Maybe wrestling fans are saying, for God's sake, if you're going to give him the championship, stop putting it off and putting it off and putting it off and constantly reiterating the same thing happening all the time. If Reigns is going to be champion, it has to happen before 2016. And as a result of that, fans are obviously pleased that Reigns is champion, but with this close to WrestleMania 32, is this really the champion that you want to see headlining what's supposed to be the biggest event not only of 2016, but every year for the last 30 years, we have seen WrestleMania headlined by the biggest names, everyone from Hulk Hogan to Stone Cold Steve Austin, and we've gone from headliners like Hulk Hogan and Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, all the way to Roman Reigns and John Cena. Is this really the predicament you want to see WWE in and remain in, heading on the road to events like the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania 32? If you say hell no, then I'm pretty much in your corner. I have to concur with how you feel about people like Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar always being in the main events, but honestly, I'd rather see Brock Lesnar in main events against people like Triple H and The Undertaker and even Roman Reigns ever before I'd ever want to see someone like Roman Reigns facing John Cena at WrestleMania. Now, I've been talking about a scenario of seeing Roman Reigns versus John Cena versus Brock Lesnar possibly for the championship at WrestleMania. I think that would be awesome if we saw either that or Reigns versus Cena versus Sheamus for the championship. One of those two ways for a direction for either three of these individuals to head in, I think would really change the complexity of WrestleMania. Now, we have seen a fair share of triple threat matches, so probably a lot of wrestling fans would not rather want to see a triple threat match. Rather, they'd go for a one-on-one match between someone like Reigns and Brock Lesnar, or possibly even Reigns and Cena, before they'd ever want to see a triple threat, because we've seen triple threat matches at events like WrestleMania 20, of course, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Chris Benoit, WrestleMania 22 with Randy Orton, Kurt Angle, and Rey Mysterio, with Mysterio coming away as world champion, and more recently, of course, at WrestleMania 30 with Randy Orton, Batista, and Daniel Bryan, with Daniel Bryan winning his first major WWE World Heavyweight Championship in very controversial fashion after having defeated Triple H earlier on in that night to punch his ticket to the main event, making it a triple threat for WrestleMania 30 and celebrating 30 years of WrestleMania. Throughout the 30-year history of WrestleMania, more triple threat matches have happened at WrestleMania than they have at any other wrestling pay-per-view in history since the very first one, the Wrestling Classic. So probably wrestling fans would rather want to see something like Roman Reigns versus John Cena, a match that hasn't happened before, rather than wanting to see something like Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. And I can't really blame wrestling fans for feeling the way that they felt about that. And to be honest with you, on a scale of 5 stars, in terms of a 5-star scale perspective rating, honestly, Roman Reigns being champion, any champion, even The Miz, dare I say, would be a better champion than the champion that we have now. For instance, someone like Dolph Ziggler, who's never given an opportunity to really amount to anything in professional wrestling. I think Dolph Ziggler would be an awesome WWE World Heavyweight Champion. It's just Dolph Ziggler is never given that opportunity to really rise up and grab that proverbial brass ring. And I really think that Dolph Ziggler would be a better champion. I mean, look at how entertaining Dolph Ziggler is. Hell, even Daniel Bryan coming out, ever before he forfeited the Intercontinental Championship, Daniel Bryan was a really entertaining champion. People like Daniel Bryan and Dolph Ziggler, in all reality, are the wrestlers that WWE fans want to see getting pushed. They don't want to see the same 4 or 5 guys being given that distinction of having to carry the show, carrying that very heavy responsibility of always wanting to produce numbers for WWE, coming out cutting promos and promoting pay-per-view matches they're going to be involved in, defending the title regularly once a month. They don't want to see John Cena on top 15 times out of a year, or seeing Brock Lesnar reiterated as champion 15 times out of a year. They want to see more of an opportunity given to names like Daniel Bryan, Dolph Ziggler, and Bray Wyatt ever before someone like a Roman Reigns. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not a fan of Roman Reigns. If Roman Reigns was more entertaining than what he is now, by far, I'd be more of a fan of him. But when it comes to, cutting a promo on the microphone, people feel he's getting better at it. I think he's still got a lot to prove to me because I've heard far better promo cutters. He's not in a league of someone like a Chris Jericho, who was considered one of the all-time greats on a microphone. He's definitely not in the category of a Stone Cold Steve Austin or a Rock. He's got a long way to go, and that really surprises me because he's from The Rock's family. You think The Rock would be giving him a couple of pointers and trying to train Roman Reigns on the microphone when it comes to cutting a very entertaining promo. You know, at the Royal Rumble and the Fallout on .com, The Rock actually had to come in and do a promo for Roman Reigns, putting him over. You would think that Roman Reigns would be talking more in the promo, but here comes The Rock on .com telling wrestling fans to support Roman Reigns because he was going to WrestleMania to become champion. Now, really the question is, what it all comes down to is, when you have people like The Rock coming in and getting a spot in to promote people like Roman Reigns, who they believe obviously have a future in wrestling, you know, really, is this who you want to see as champion? Is WWE really putting a lot of faith into someone like Roman Reigns, or are they significantly doubting in the abilities of Roman Reigns and showing that they are doubting? And at the end of the day, is this really who you want to see on top? It comes down to the choice of a wrestling fan and the responses of wrestling fans, even though WWE don't take into consideration your ideas for matches like Sting versus The Undertaker. We got that in the fall of the WrestleMania 31 and the post-WrestleMania celebration with how fans were chanting Sting versus Undertaker. They may not listen to your opinions in terms of crowd reactions, but they do listen to your responses that you're giving people that they choose to put on top and people they want you to cheer for while they're on top. Roman Reigns, in all reality, may not be the guy that we are cheering for, but they are trying to convince us that we want to believe in Roman Reigns. We all want to become believers and make that convergence from being non-believers into Roman Reigns into believers. I'm not someone who wants to make that conversion just yet. I'm not saying that I won't be a bigger fan of Roman Reigns 6 months from now, because I will be, probably, depending on what kind of direction we are headed in. But right now, the direction of a character like Roman Reigns looks very uncertain, and I can't say that I've really been entertained by anything that Roman Reigns has done. Have you ever, here's a good point, have you ever heard the fans chanting awesome during any of Roman Reigns' matches? The only matches they have chanted awesome for were matches with Seth Rollins, because Seth Rollins was an over-the-top performer. You know, I've criticized Seth